Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano are two of the most beloved Star Wars characters. Known for defeating the Sith and being Anakin's apprentice, the duo occupied the position of the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy following the destruction of the Empire. From the book of Boba Fett, we learn they know each other, although we still don't know from when and how well they know each other. But ever since then, many people have shipped them together. So what if Luke and Ahsoka fell in love? Let's start the story after the fall of the Galactic Empire. The two first meet a few years after the fall of Vader and Sidious. We don't know where and when in canon, but I would guess it would be at least 5 years. Luke would likely have more knowledge on Ahsoka from Obi-Wan or Anakin's Force Ghost. As Luke scours the galaxy, searching for a way to rebuild the Jedi Order, he would be visited from his old master and father quite often. Luke lights a fire and allows the golden hue to cascade against his face and signals to any nearby animals that it's not safe to approach. Suddenly, with a whistle, Anakin and Obi-Wan appear, speaking to Luke and asking him about his progress in rebuilding the Order. Luke would say that he hasn't gotten far. He has visited old Jedi temples, read scrolls, and he feels like a Jedi himself, but no students to teach and no masters to help him. He was clearly lost. Kenobi and Anakin look at each other as they explain that his father's apprentice is still somewhere in the galaxy and that he must find her. The son would begin searching for Ahsoka, following his father's advice and going to places in the Outer Rim. Ahsoka liked to stay away from core worlds and the Republic. She left that life a long time ago. As he descends into Lothal after learning that she's searching for an old friend that used to live here, he can sense her presence. He finds her at the old Lothal Jedi Temple, which ironically is a place Luke had been curious to go. He dreams of visiting all the Jedi temples in the galaxy and learning as much as possible from all of them. As he enters the temple, Ahsoka swiftly turns and ignites her white lightsabers, immediately assuming a defensive stance. This wouldn't affect Luke, and when Tano sees the boy's face, she immediately understands who this is. The Togruta smiles, and she places her sabers back on her belt. They introduce themselves. Luke was surprised at Ahsoka's beauty, having heard stories about her over the last couple of years as Anakin's apprentice. He never stopped to consider that she would be a stunning and courageous Togruta. Ahsoka mirrored Luke's thoughts, and Tano congratulated Luke on defeating the Empire, saying she heard of his victory over Palpatine. Someone like Ahsoka could appreciate this more than most. She grew up in the Jedi Temple and knew Palpatine as a man and politician before his exposure as a Sith Lord who destroyed the Jedi and reigned as a dictator for 2 decades. Many tried defeating him, including Yoda, including Windu, but only Luke could be the one to defeat him. She asked how Anakin was in his last moments. This was the first time the Chosen One was mentioned, immediately creating a connection between the two, and it felt like they were old friends throughout their kinship connection with Skywalker. Luke explained to Ahsoka that Anakin turned back to the light, that it wasn't him who defeated Palpatine, but Anakin. Luke merely acted as the catalyst that allowed Anakin to turn back. He saved his life. He died as a Jedi Master. A hero. This story brought Ahsoka to tears immediately. She had washed herself with guilt. Ever since she learned of her master's fate in turning to the dark side, she always found a way to blame herself, but none could have predicted Anakin's treachery. Ahsoka and Luke hug, and for a moment, it was like the galaxy stopped spinning, and it was just them, their connection. Ahsoka asks why Luke is here, to which Luke explains that he is starting a mission to rebuild the Jedi Order. The galaxy needs protection and a hope for peace. This intrigued Ahsoka, who had her own issues with the previous order, but perhaps a completely fresh start while taking on the lessons of the past could be exactly what the galaxy needs. She offers how this is an ambitious and difficult task that will take many years, but Luke countered, saying that now the Empire is defeated and they have all the time in the world, he will dedicate his life to this pursuit. But this is when Ahsoka drops some news on Luke, that there are still dark forces out there who wish to wreak havoc on the galaxy. She asks if she's ever heard of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Luke nods, but he heard he is dead. Ahsoka knew this wasn't true. He was alive, and with her friend and powerful Jedi Knight, Ezra Bridger. Luke agrees to help her find Ezra, as he would be a valuable asset to the Jedi Order, but also so they can defeat Thrawn. Hey guys, make sure to check out our saber shop Fantasy Sabers for the best NeoPixel sabers on the market. We have a bunch of perfect replicas and other insane Padawan sabers for sale. Check them out on our website, first link in the description below, and grab your own one today. Luke and Ahsoka started their journey together, traveling through the unknown regions, looking for any sign of Ezra or Thrawn. They went from planet to planet, exploring old Jedi temples and ruins, sometimes finding clues, and sometimes finding nothing at all. All the way along, they spent a lot of time talking. Ahsoka told Luke stories about Anakin, what he was like as a teacher, how he inspired her, and how hard it was when she found out he had turned to the dark side. Luke opened up about his struggles trying to rebuild the Jedi Order, and how he was worried he wasn't doing enough. They trained together too, practicing their lightsaber skills and sharing what they know about the Force. Over time, they started to feel closer. Luke admired Ahsoka's strength and experience, while Ahsoka saw Luke's hope and determination as something special. It wasn't something they planned or even talked about much, but as they worked together, they started to feel something more than just friendship. Ahsoka teaches Luke advanced Force techniques that she learned during her expansive life. She was slightly older than Luke, perhaps 15 years, and she had spent time inside the Jedi Temple honing her skills, but also out in the galaxy like Luke, learning how life goes. Even though Luke's power in the Force perhaps exceeded hers, her knowledge was extremely valuable to Luke. She helped him with Form 5. Though not a master of the form herself, she recalled Anakin speaking about turning defensive into offensive during her training. Under the stars on countless quiet nights, Luke and Ahsoka found themselves sharing parts of their lives they hadn't spoken about with anyone else. Luke opened up about the loneliness he felt after defeating the Empire, how even victory felt hollow without people to share it with. Ahsoka in turn shared her feelings of losing those she cared about again and again, a wound still fresh from her experiences with Anakin and the Jedi Order. Those moments forged an unspoken bond between them, a growing connection that felt both comforting and unfamiliar. On one remote planet, by a serene lake surrounded by trees, they decided to spar for fun. What started as playful banter and feints with their lightsabers turned into uncontrollable laughter when Ahsoka tripped Luke with a single well-timed move. Their laughter echoed across the water, and as Luke helped Ahsoka back to her feet, their hands lingered just a little longer than usual. Neither spoke of it directly, but the spark between them was undeniable. Even though Ahsoka was more than a decade older, the age gap didn't feel like an obstacle. It was overshadowed by a sense of trust and understanding that they shared. It was almost like they were the only ones who could understand what they've been through. During their journey, Luke and Ahsoka made a stop on Tatooine, drawn by Luke's desire to show Ahsoka where Anakin's story began. Standing outside the crumbled remains of the Lars homestead, Luke explained how his father had grown up on this desolate world, a slave who dreamed of freedom and the stars. Ahsoka listened in silence, imagining a young Anakin filled with hopes and fears, his boundless potential struggle enshrined in the harsh sands of Tatooine. Ahsoka began to share stories of Anakin. It started with a casual mention of how reckless he could be, but as she spoke, her tone shifted into something warmer, more animated. She told Luke about the time Anakin had jumped into a separatist tank mid-battle, lightsaber blazing, just to prove a point to Obi-Wan. Luke listened intently, smiling as Ahsoka described her father's determination to protect others, even when it meant ignoring others or taking insane risks. She laughed, remembering how Anakin had once used a droid as a makeshift sled during a stowing mission on Auto Plutonia, much to Obi-Wan's dismay. Luke's eyes lit up as Ahsoka shared these glimpses of Anakin's life during the Clone Wars. He could almost picture his father, not as Darth Vader, but as the heroic Jedi Knight who had fought alongside Ahsoka. She spoke about how much Anakin had trusted her, even when the Jedi Council didn't, and how his belief in her had given her the strength to walk her own paths. But as the sun lowered, Ahsoka's tone changed as she detailed Anakin turning to the dark side. Luke noticed how Ahsoka's voice trembled when she spoke of the betrayal she had felt, and without thinking, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held it tightly, as though finding strength in his presence. At that moment, No words were needed to express the depth of the connection between them. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand, the unspoken feelings between them grew undeniable. It wasn't just their shared mission or their connection to Anakin, it was the way they seemed to complete something in each other that neither had realized was missing. Sitting there, under the fading light, their bond deepened, silent but powerful, as the Tatooine night embraced them. Their search for Ezra continued, and eventually, they found a star map buried in an ancient ruin. The map pointed to a cluster of stars neither had seen before. Guided by its directions, they arrived at Cetos, a desolate but strangely vibrant world where they placed the star map into the rocks as the Force swirled powerfully around them. The Force revealed that Ahsoka was in an entirely other galaxy, leaving them confused and uncertain. They didn't have the kind of ship capable of making such a journey. As they sat together in the stillness of the moment, Luke wondered aloud what Anakin might have done. Ahsoka laughed, her voice soft but warm, and told him about all the times Anakin had no clue what he was doing, relying on only his instincts and trust in the Force to guide him. Luke smiled at that, and as their eyes met, he admitted something he hadn't planned to say, that with her, he felt a peace and purpose he'd never experienced before. Ahsoka hesitated, the weight of her own fears holding her back, but when she saw the sincerity in Luke's eyes, she confessed that his unwavering optimism and selflessness had rekindled a hope in her she thought she had lost forever. She admitted that being with him made her feel less alone and less afraid. Luke leaned closer, his voice steady but full of emotion, as he told her that she inspired him to be more, not just as a Jedi, but as a person. In that moment, the barriers between them faded and they both gave in to what had been building for so long. With the Force humming softly around them, they shared their first kiss, sealing a love born from trust, shared pain, and undeniable bond. As they pulled away from the kiss, still catching their breath, a soft glow lit behind them. Turning around, they saw him, Anakin Skywalker, standing there as a Force ghost with a familiar, easy grin. Ahsoka froze, her heart racing. She hadn't seen him in almost 30 years, and the sight of him left her stunned. Luke felt a mix of awe and calm, like seeing his father again was exactly what he needed. Anakin chuckled softly, admitting he wasn't expecting this between them, but he said it was good, really good. Then he got serious, turning to Ahsoka to apologize. He told her how much he regretted the pain he caused, the mistakes he made, and the way he let the dark side twist everything. Ahsoka listened quietly, her emotions all over the place. But there was this softness in her eyes, like she'd finally found some closure. Luke jumped in, saying he didn't think attachments were the problem for the Jedi, and Anakin nodded, agreeing. He said that it wasn't love that ruined the Jedi, it was banning it, like it was some dangerous thing. But love, he told them, could be the Jedi's greatest strength if they learned to control it. He looked at both of them like a proud parent, saying he was happy they'd found each other and telling them to keep that balance. Before fading away, he told them to find the Purgles, big creatures that could take them to Peridia. That's where they'd find Ezra. When he was gone, Ahsoka and Luke just stood there for a moment, soaking it all in. Then without saying much, they went to work, finding the Purgles and guiding their ship into hyperspace. The galaxy felt wide and open again, but now they faced it together, stronger than ever. As the two journeyed to the neighboring galaxy, home to Thrawn and Ezra, they had made it. As their ship descended into the strange planet, the sight of Thrawn's massive fleet loomed before them. But something felt off. Though the fleet was there in full force, both Ahsoka and Luke sensed that Ezra wasn't among them. Trusting the Force, they followed its pull until they came upon an isolated structure where the old Jedi was waiting for them. He greeted them warmly, relief written across his face, but his tone turned urgent as he explained the dire situation. Thrawn had found a way to return to the galaxy, and time was running out. They needed to act fast. Luke pressed for answers, and Ezra revealed Thrawn's plan. He had managed to capture several Purgles, creatures capable of navigating the void between galaxies. Without hesitation, they left to stop Thrawn. If he returned to the known galaxy, there would be another galactic war. Arriving back at Thrawn's fleet, his flagship began to ascend into the galaxy. They had to hurry before it was too late, and their window of opportunity was shrinking with every passing second. The battle erupted the moment they entered, with blaster fire filling the air and witches chanting dark magic. But Luke, Ahsoka and Ezra were undeterred. Ahsoka was a blur of white blades, slicing through stormtroopers with grace and precision, her mind clear and focused on the mission. Ezra was fluid and fast, using his green lightsaber to deflect blaster bolts while hurling enemies aside with the Force. Luke was relentless, his blue blade moving in perfect rhythm with theirs, each strike stronger than the last as he powered through Thrawn's forces. Despite the onslaught, there was a unity between them, their connection to the Force amplifying their strength and making them nearly unstoppable. In moments of chaos, they glanced at each other, exchanging silent encouragements, their bond growing stronger with each passing second. They fought as one, Luke with his unwavering belief and hope, Ahsoka with her calm determination, and Ezra with his resourcefulness. Together, they cut a path through the stormtroopers and witches, pushing closer to Thrawn's flagship. The trio maneuvered as one, cutting through the final pockets of resistance until they reached the bridge. Thrawn stood waiting, his posture calm and calculating, though his defeat was evident in his eyes. Ahsoka stepped forward, ready to restrain him, but before he could, the entire room erupted again. Stormtroopers burst in from hidden-side passages, blaster fire filling the air. Ahsoka turned instinctively, her lightsaber a blur as she deflected the bolts, and Luke and Ezra sprang into action to shield her. However, Thrawn used this moment to draw a concealed blaster, his movements quick. The shot rang out, hitting Ahsoka in the stomach. She gasped and fell, her lightsaber clattering to the ground. Luke froze for a moment, watching her collapse, and something inside him snapped. Fury overtook him, the Force exploding within him in a raw, uncontrollable wave. Every trooper in the room, along with Thrawn, was lifted into their air, their struggles meaningless against Luke's sheer power. His expression was grim, his jaw tight as he let his rage take over, snapping the necks of his enemies with a sickening finality. Thrawn was dead. The room fell silent except for the hum of Ezra's lightsaber and Luke's raging breath. He dropped to his knees beside Ahsoka, panic and desperation washing over him as he placed a trembling hand over her wound. Closing his eyes, he reached into the Force, pulling every ounce of strength and focus to heal her. The energy poured from him like a tidal wave, and slowly, her eyes fluttered open, relief overwhelming him as she gasped for breath, her face pale but alive. Ezra moved to her side, his own worry etched across his face, but Luke barely noticed. His gaze stayed locked on Ahsoka, his hand still hovering over her as if afraid she might slip away again. The battle was won. Ezra was safe, and the galaxy would not be thrusted into another war. After they came back to the known galaxy, Luke and Ahsoka's bond grew even stronger, and before long, they were married. It was a beautiful, quiet moment, just the two of them, knowing they'd finally found their peace in the galaxy. They didn't waste time, jumping right into rebuilding the Jedi Order. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant was in ruins, but with a lot of work and a lot of love, it started to come back to life. Ezra was there to help too, bringing his wisdom and experience into the mix. Soon, the temple was full of students, each one eager to learn the ways of the Force. Luke and Ahsoka led the Order together as co-Grand Masters, balancing each other perfectly with their strengths and their love for the Jedi. They didn't just teach, they nurtured a new generation, one that was built on understanding and connection, not the strict rules of the past. They had kids of their own, and eventually, those kids joined the Order too, carrying on their parents' legacy. Anakin and Obi-Wan would visit often, proud of what Luke and Ahsoka had done. They looked at the new Jedi and New Hope and just smiled, working together with the New Republic and the Chancellor, who was Luke's sister, Leia Organa. The Republic became a much safer place. It wasn't just about peace in the galaxy, it was about the love that held everything together. The Skywalkers had finally found their peace, and the galaxy was better for it.
Ignite your imagination with fantasy sabers.
If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch what if Vader and Ahsoka fell in love and what if Ahsoka raised Luke and Leia. Please check out our saber shop, Fantasy Sabers, for the largest collection of replicas, Padawan sabers and more. The link is first in the description. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.